The House Select Committee continues to investigate the Capitol riot. Members of that committee are busy preparing for the public report to drop later this year. But before that, we expect to hear a lot of hearings. We expect to see a lot of evidence come down. And we're going to learn a lot about January 6th and really ourselves as well. Rina Shah is an advisor with the new Renew Democracy Initiative. She's up late with me tonight on the Final Five. Rina, always good to have you on the show. Welcome back.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having me here.
We're in such hyper-political times, and I know regardless of where you stand on the spectrum, the way that we interpret things, the way that we interpret whether they be reports, whether it's the Mueller report or anything else, it really seems to be predicated upon where we stand, where we look at things. And I suspect that when this report comes out, it's not going to be much different.
Well, Jim, you and I both know that there are partisans out there who will not accept anything despite an overwhelming amount of evidence that perhaps points to the contrary of a point that they previously believed. So that is a challenge. Look, democracy is messy by design. I really believe that, and I think it's important for us to recognize that from the outset. But it takes unity to be a democracy like ours. And that's what this report at the end of the day hopes to accomplish, is to unite the country around a sense of what happened on the day that we had an actual insurrection on our U.S. Capitol. That is something that the history books will remember forever, that in the days following the insurrection, we had such division continue to seep through our electorate and lead to other things that are actually even more dangerous for our democracy. We all know about the prevalence of misinformation and what it can do, but the very fact that there were Americans who continued to scream fake news and say that there was a narrative that led to the events of January 6th, I believe that put us in a very unusual spot and actually sets us completely apart from a time during which we heard from the FBI and the Mueller report.
I met you through covering various political stories through the years, but we talked to you back in 2016 when you were a delegate to the Republican National Convention. You said you disagreed with the nominee at that time, Donald Trump. The party more or less shunned you from the convention that time around. And what we're seeing right now is a Republican Party that looked at, and look, I'm not talking about the rally outside of the White House. That's one thing, but when you look at what happened down Pennsylvania Avenue, down to the Capitol, through the front doors, that's still considered to be free speech, an expression of a First Amendment action there. I don't know how you go back on changing that.
Well, words matter here, and the very fact that we can use insurrection is because, by definition, that's what it was. There were events, there were actions. There's no stammering here, excuse me, because I think about that day, Jim, and I still get emotional because there's just nothing like it that we know in modern history that has even come close. So stepping back for a moment, again, words matter. Why can we call it an insurrection is because there was an incitement to riot, and there was a physical riot. There were lives actually lost, and we can point to certain words that day that took place in front of the White House. We can point to the words not just of the 45th president of the United States, Donald Trump, but his supporters and the many people that were tasked with organizing what was supposed to be a non-violent demonstration. Sure. Now, in 2016, because you referenced my past there, when I did what I did as an RNC delegate, I became the first delegate in the country to do so. I did not know that. When I echoed my concerns that I'd been having in private conversations with many establishment Republicans, people who made their careers in Republican politics like me, I didn't think stepping out and saying it on national television was any different than saying it in private conversations. When I did that, I was breaking away from the pack and signaling to Donald Trump and his team that there are people here who don't want you to have the nomination. We could potentially deny him the nomination. As we know, that did not happen. But fast forward to the events of last year, and we talk about January 6th, it was exactly what I was worried about. The incitement to riot, the political violence that I had not seen happen in my lifetime, in our lifetimes, that came to fruition that day. And what we know that this committee is doing, despite it being stacked with Democrats and there being only 2 Republican lawmakers on it, is that the committee wants to get to the bottom of why it happened, exactly what happened, and show the American public very clearly and communicate that but also do it in a unique way. And that's going to be achieved by video, Jim. That video content is going to be king to get through to our fellow Americans about just why January 6, 2021 was so very dangerous and continues to be dangerous for our country today.
Rina, I'm just about out of time here, but I think you and I would imagine the first presidential election that we paid rapt attention to was probably 2000 with George W. Bush. And the fact you have Liz Cheney now serving in the Congress, Cheney's are as Republican as they get. The fact that she's been more or less ostracized by the GOP, does that give you doubt as to what could happen with your party, the GOP, in the future?
Well, Liz Cheney is certainly somebody who stepped out and taken these unpopular sort of views, meaning broken from the party's views. And I support her because I think that's a very necessary thing. It's even more necessary, again, to keep our country in moving forward in the manner in which we know that the founders wanted. They wanted us to continue to strive for a more perfect union. You do that by welcoming diversity of thought, even within political parties. The fact that she's been censured for that, and there have been people who called for violence and other horrific acts to happen, who are her sitting colleagues, lawmakers, and those people haven't been censured by their local parties, tells us just what a hyper partisan time that we are living in. And the very fact that there are people inside the Beltway who want to give support to that, not just because she has a Cheney as her last name, they understand what's at stake here if we continue to let these people be thrown under the bus by a majority in a political party. So I welcome the many challenges that she'll face. It's brave of her to go about it, but I think it's a very important time for establishment Republicans. And yes, and I want young people to understand that too, Jim. Establishment's not a bad word. There are people who've worked very hard to get our country to get it to where it has gotten to. Prosper is a place where we can all feel like we belong. So let's not throw out the people that have this wisdom that are now saying to Cheney, Trump brand is toxic. Let's get on and move on and back the patriots like Liz Cheney, who are doing the hard work of taking opinions and taking stances that are tough to take.
Rina Shah, out of time. Good to see you again. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me. It was good to see you.
And the Final Five is back after this.